Hello everyone, this is my Eurorack case, my main one. I've got a couple other things here and there, but I'll pop up a picture of what it looked like not that long ago. So you might have noticed there was a slim 3U case right here, and all that it had in it was Roland's digital modules. So the System 1M and their 4FX boxes, which I'll show here in a second. So I'm building a new case, and the reason is that I wanted to put all those in something a little better, and along with all the other Roland modules. So you can see here I've got all of their 500 series stuff, all 9 that they've made so far. So part of the reason is that power has always been an issue for those digital modules, and I'll show you here. All right, here are all the other Roland modules I was talking about. They made these 4 little effects. They don't make them anymore. And the System 1M, which is the rack version of the System 1. So they can all connect with power adapters, just wall wart style power adapters. Or they can connect with this little doodad that they all came with, which has got the DC plug to a Eurorack ribbon power cable. So the deal with those is that these take a lot of milliamps on the 12-volt rail and nothing else. So if you were to put all these into one rack together, I've got it on modular grid here, what it's going to look like. So according to the data sheet, the effects are 450 milliamps each, and the System 1M is 700 milliamps. So you're talking, I'm doing math in my head now, so 2.5 amps about, just for these 5 modules, and that's on the 12-volt rail, and nothing else. So there's not a whole lot of Eurorack power supplies out there that would handle that. All my other cases are powered with the Tip Top Audio Zeus Studio Bus power supplies. This case, the top one has 3 of those in it, and this case has 6 of those in it. So I could have gone that route for this new case. If you wired up 3 to one of their power supplies, theoretically it would make it for the full amount, but just barely, which I'm not a big fan of just barely on power stuff. So I was making this new case, which there it is on modular grid with these 4 guys, that, and then the 9 modules down here in a little extra space. And I want to put it in a portable case, and I had the idea of covering it in Tolex, like a guitar amp or something. So that's what I'm doing. And here it is. Ta-da! Okay, so I did build the case. It is 12U, 84 HP, and we can just spin it around here. I did the Tolex covering. It went surprisingly well, and got all the cool silver hardware for it and such. On the side here, here's a whole bunch of stuff, which I'll go in detail later as to what it's all doing, but I've got the power outlet, the cooling fan, MIDI in and out jacks, USB-B, a USB-A plug, and 2 power switches. So the case is done. I need to put the rails in it, obviously, and wire it up. But I was going to talk about what I decided to do on the power a little bit, since it's a little power hungry. So I'll show you what I went with. Okay, welcome to my garage. So what I decided to do on the power supply is go with a Meanwell power supply. So I got this one. It is called the RT125B. I know the RT65B is quite popular for people to use for Eurorack. I went for the little heftier one because that one again was really close on the 12 volt for this project, so I went with this larger one. Its specs are 12 amps on the 5 volt, 5 amps on positive 12, and 1 amp at negative 12. And that's more than enough I need. Obviously the 5 volt, I don't need anything, but it's there. we'll talk about that in a second. So I'm using this. I've got various, terminal strips and stuff to keep the inside of the case nice and clean. I'm using these two bus boards. They are from Synthrotech. I had them for an old case that wasn't using them anymore, so I didn't have to buy anything. And so you saw the power switch on the side. That's for the AC input. And then the side of this has a 5 volt, a common, which is the common for all the DC, positive 12 and negative 12, and that's no connection. Also, this didn't come with any mounting hardware, which I discovered after I got it, but I found a couple just L bracket things that were in my garage that fit. And these happen to be M3 screws, which of course I have a million of those from modules and stuff. The other thing I'll say about this, it's got on the inside there your power selector and a little sticker telling you to select your voltage. Even though I got this in the US, it was actually selected on 230, so I'm glad they put that sticker on there. I wouldn't have thought to check that. So that's what I'm doing for the power. As for the other stuff on the case, the cooling fan is to cool it, yes, but it's also to give a little, it's a 5 volt fan. So it's to give a little bit of amperage on the 5 volt rail. The USB-A jack is just going to be a power jack, so I can power like a gooseneck light or like a BeatStep Pro or something with it. And those both have power switches. And the USB-B and the MIDI jacks are just for the Roland stuff, so I can break out the connectors on the back. So I've read a lot about these Meanwell supplies, and one thing I did read is that they need some load on the 5 volt rail in order to work properly and not buzz and whine and make hum and stuff. So part of the reason, that's yet another reason I added a 5 volt fan and the 5 volt connector on the side to put a little load on the 5 volt rail. And I did test it, which I'll throw up a little video here of when I tested it. Alright, so I'm doing my final test of the power before I say we're good. So basically I've got the mains coming into the little outlet thing right here, going into the power supply, and then I've got the common, the plus 12, minus 12, and 5 volt coming to these terminal strips. I've got the bus board wired to the 3 voltages in the common. These bus boards use a little Tolex connector, so they're all hooked to the terminal strips. And I've also wired in a cooling fan that I'm going to put on the case. That's 5 volts to the 5 volt rail. And I've also wired in this USB jack that I'm going to put on the side of the case. That's just going to be for power, so I can put like a gooseneck lamp on it. And right now I just have this little LED Christmas light thing plugged into it to see if it works. So I'm hoping this 5 volt is enough to load the 5 volt rail, because I have read that these Meanwell power supplies do like the 5 volt rail loaded, and none of the Eurorack stuff I'm plugging into it even use 5 volts. So between the USB jack for the light and the fan, that's a little bit of loading, but I might still have to put a power resistor across the 5 volt rail so it doesn't buzz and hum. Because before I put the fan in the USB jack, it was buzzing and humming when I did this exact thing. So I guess we'll see. If all else fails, I'll put a power resistor across the 5 volt rail in common. But I think I'm going to say it's pretty good, and finish the case now. Okay, so that was me talking about the power when I tested it. Now I'll go over the box just a bit. I didn't make much video of me making it, but it's made from 1x8s for the frame. And I inset a piece of 3/4 inch plywood just because I had it, and I needed something to be able to screw all the electronics into the back of it, so it couldn't be like 1/4 inch plywood or something, so I just used what I had. And here's a short video. I talked about making this panel and what all the jacks are for. So here you go. So now I have finished the panel for the side. So what all this is for is, I've used these top 3 in my last case. I just moved them to this new panel. This is the USB-B jack that's going to connect to all the Roland FX that all have USB interfaces on them. They all connect to a small hub on the inside. And then the two MIDI jacks are for MIDI in and out of the System 1M. And this power switch is going to turn the fan on and off. Most likely I'm just going to leave it on all the time, though I thought it'd be good to have an option. And this power switch will turn this USB jack on and off, and it's just for power only. So I thought for the gooseneck light or whatever I end up using it for. And the back, for now is not much. This USB plug, it just, you know, has the A on the back of it. And the one that's going to be used for power is just going to the wires, and the switch is not hooked up. The MIDI jacks I had to wire in and put heat shrink tubing. That was exciting. It's kind of a pain, but it does work. I tested it a bunch of times. So now I'm going to move on to finishing the box. It has all the holes cut in the side. That's for that big panel I just showed you. That's for the fan, and that's for the power switch and IEC power jack. And yeah, I'm just gonna sand the inside a bit and then paint it black, and then I'll be ready for the Tolex covering. Cool, so I did finish the box and I did paint it, did the Tolex covering. So my tip on that is just get something good. And as far as the glue and such, because I know there's a lot of, when I Googled it to figure out how to glue it and all that, there was all the information you'd ever want to hear and then some. So I ended up buying from probably Amazon, I think, but it was just called Tolex glue. It was this jug of stuff that was completely unmarked, but it pretty much looked and smelled like Elmer's glue or wood glue or something. But I brushed it on with like a foam brush and did it that way, just because the spray stuff seemed really messy and really harsh, and I didn't want to have to wear a respirator and all that stuff in order to do it. And this worked quite well. I watched a lot of YouTube videos on how to cover the Tolex. The one I liked the most, and I kept playing back as I was doing it, I'll link in the description. He went over it really well on how to do the seams in the corners and all that stuff. The corners turned out really nice, despite me covering them up with these. But and also the other tip I learned from YouTube is whenever you're marking it out and cutting it, you can use a piece of chalk on the inside because it's not going to affect the gluing. This piece, I just bought one, I think they're called linear yards, I believe. It was 3 feet wide by like 54 inches long. Well, 3 feet wide was exactly what I needed, so that was a little nerve-wracking, but I measured a ton and used chalk to basically draw it out on the back of the Tolex. That way I knew exactly where to position it when I started gluing, and it worked perfectly. So, chalk, yeah. And I liked the brush-on glue. It worked really well. And it basically worked just like a spray-on glue. Like you see in the videos, you just brush it on and then let it get kind of dry where it's tacky. You brush it on both sides, the wood and the Tolex, and then you cover it. So it's like contact cement, sort of. So anyway, I'll link that video down there in case you want to do any Tolex covering of your own. So next up, I'm going to wire it and test it out extensively, and then see if I'm going to have to buy some power resistors to load down that 5-volt rail anymore that I was talking about before. And so I'll see you after I do that. Alright, I'm back from wiring it. It all went well. It took quite a while. I'm just starting to test it out with the modules, and it's all good. I kind of went over this before, but so the power supply I have going into these terminal blocks, and I labeled them and put the covers on them when I was done, so it's easy to know. Common, 5, plus 12, minus 12. And then they just all get distributed to the boards, the 2 boards, and then the 5-volt also kind of goes over to this mess of the back of this side panel to do the fan and the USB power jack on the side. So it all works. I plugged in all these Roland digital modules, and indeed the power supply does whine in a little bit, but But if the fan is on and I have something plugged in the USB jack, it goes away. So you do need some load on the 5-volt rail. I don't know how putting the other modules down here is going to affect that, but I'm about ready to find out. But the wiring went well. I just used spade connectors pretty much everywhere and heat shrink tubing just to make it extra sure. Also, a cool thing about this power supply that I found, I needed a cover for the terminals right here. And I thought of this after I ordered it, of course, so I didn't really want to pay shipping for a 20-cent item. So there was one on Thingiverse for this exact power supply. So I 3D printed it and it fit perfectly. So anyway, next video I'll show you the completed result, I guess. And it's done. Everything works great and looks great on it. I do have this extra 16 HP down here that I have to figure out what to do with. One idea I had was to get a second one of the Roland envelopes, which is the 540. That's not very exciting, but it would be useful. I also thought about one of those Mordax data modules with the oscilloscope and tuner and stuff. That would be pretty awesome. Anyway, if you have any ideas how to fill up the 16 HP, let me know. I got the table all rearranged using some of these laptop stands and stuff so it fits. Ended up having the Uno synth in front of it, so that's what's plugged into the power jack on the side. Also got my other smaller case rearranged, the portable case. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions at all about anything I talked about, whether it's the power or the Tolex or whatever, just let me know in the comments and I'll be glad to answer. Thanks for watching.